Hello guys, how's it going? Here is Ronald again with Coastline Robotics, and today I wanted to make this video because I had some problems with my radio at the beginning of this year. I was not taking care properly of my radio, and unfortunately I ended up breaking some switches from it. So as you can see here, I lost 4 of my switches. This one here is not working anymore, and just because I was not using a proper backpack to put it inside. So today I'm gonna replace all these switches. As a second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upgrade my gimbals. I'm gonna install the M9 Hall sensor gimbals. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing that we have to do before opening the radio is to remove the battery. I have made the same mistake several times, and it's just so annoying when you want to remove it and then you can't because there's still the battery. So anyways, the next step you have to do is to remove the 6 screws that are holding the 2 pieces together, the 2 faces together. And this is pretty straightforward, so I'm just gonna fast forward the video while I do this. Okay, now that we have removed the screws, you have to be extra careful when separating the 2 faces of the radio, because the back part is attached to the front part by a couple of ribbon wires. And all you have to do is to unlock them just as I'm showing you here in the video. Just pull the tab a little bit without too much strength and carefully remove the ribbons, and that's it. And now I'm gonna place the back face or the back part of the radio in a safe place, because I'm gonna start working on the frontal face of the radio. And we're gonna start replacing the 2 switches that were damaged. These are the SE 3 position switch and the SG 3 position switch. So these 3 position switch, they are connected to the main board of the radio by 3 wires. I want to keep the same order, and what I'm gonna do is first remove the heat shrink that is covering it, and then I'm gonna desolder it, and then I'm gonna solder on the same position or in the same little tab on the new switch. That way I know exactly on which position each wire was. Again, I'm double checking that I am placing the wire in the proper location by checking the label that is on the switch itself. So very important to first put the heat shrink before soldering it. Trust me, this is a really common mistake everybody does. You solder first the wire and then you realize that there's no heat shrink. So yeah, I've learned my lesson and I always put first my heat shrink on it. Then you have to apply some solder material on the little tab where we're gonna be connecting the wire. And now you simply solder the wire to the proper tab. Repeat the same process with the other wires until you have completely removed the old switch and installed the new one. Okay, now I have replaced all the wires on this switch. Now what I'm gonna do is install this little black piece that was on the old one. This will help us to keep the switch in place and very tight. Okay, now I'm gonna start to replace the second damaged switch, and it's basically doing the same process that I did with the other switch. So I'm gonna speed up this part of the video. Okay, now I'm done with these 2 switches from the frontal face, and I'm gonna continue with the 2 switches that I need to replace on the back face. These switches that I have to replace on the back face, they look a little bit different, but they are exactly the same as the ones that we just replaced. The difference is that they have attached a little PCB board and a JST connector for 2 wires only. And the reason we have only 2 wires is because these are 2 position switch. So the first one is the SF 2 position switch, which is on the left side, back side of the remote control. And then the second one is the SH temporary switch, that is located on the back part of the right side of the remote control. Now if you take a look at the switch, it has this black part on top that you will have to remove, and then we are gonna recycle this PCB board. We're gonna put it on, install it on the new switches. So somehow we will have to detach these two components, these two parts. The little PCB board must be replaced from the old switch and installed on the new one. So what we're gonna be using is the soldering wick to absorb this soldering material. Now I don't have a desoldering wick, and so I have to create my own, and I'm gonna be using for that the brass sponge that I use to clean the iron tip, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of flux. That way the solder material that is on the PCB will flow towards the heated piece of brass sponge. I know this might be tricky at first, but with some practice you'll master this technique, and it's very useful, especially when you have to remove components that are attached by more than one soldering point. Now, as you can see, we have removed pretty much all the soldering material that was on the PCB. Now, I'm just gonna use my soldering iron to heat up the little legs. And as you can see, this PCB board comes off really easy. Now, this is my old switch. It's gonna go to the garbage, and now we're gonna install this little PCB on the new switch. Now, you just have to add the solder material once you have installed the new switch, using the classic technique of heating both surfaces and then applying the soldering material. Now I'm going to install that little piece of plastic that I've removed from the previous one, and I'm going to place it on its position. All you have to take into account is to where the JST plug is pointing at. So it should be pointing towards the center of the radio, because you want to connect that little cable that is next to it. So I did the same with the other, and as you can see, they have been replaced and installed on the back part of the radio. Now again, we're gonna leave this part of the radio in a safe place, and we're gonna come back to the front face because we're gonna replace the gimbals. Now, to remove the old gimbals, you will have to unscrew these 4 screws that are on the front side of the radio. Use a hexagonal screwdriver. I'm gonna start with the left gimbal, which is the throttle and yaw stick. And once you have unscrewed all the screws, you will have to detach these connectors that are linking the gimbal to the main PCB board of the radio. This is our old gimbal. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna store it in a safe location, because you'll never know what's gonna happen in the future. Maybe you want to use it, maybe you want to replace it again. I'm just gonna save it. Now let's take out the new gimbal. Here it is, the new M9 Hall sensor gimbal. Let's take it out of the box. Let's take out the screws. They're different, they're a little bit different from the ones that you just removed. Before installing this gimbal, you have to remember this is the throttle side, the throttle stick. So we have to remove this little spring, because we don't want our throttle to be returning to the center all the time. So it's pretty easy, this process. All you have to do is remove this little spring, but first you'll have to release the tension by unscrewing this little screw that is next to it, and then just use little pliers to remove the spring carefully. So remove the top part and then remove the bottom part. And again, I'm gonna save this little spring because probably in the future I wanna reinstall it or something like that. Now our throttle stick is free, but it's a little bit loose. So in order to solve this problem, you have to screw or tighten these 2 little screws that we're seeing right now. There are 2 little metal plates. The one towards the center it's gonna increase the tension, while the one on the outside will add a little bit of a texture of your movement, a little bit of a ratchet feeling. So this is something that you have to do according to your preferences. You'll decide how hard you want it, how tense you want it, or if you want or not that little texture, that little ratchet feeling on the throttle stick. I'm just tightening and testing at the same time to have a feeling. I'm gonna add a little bit of that ratchet feeling, and I think that I'm satisfied with how it feels right now. These new gimbals have a little bit bigger shape where the screws are going to be mounted. So for that reason, we will have to remove these two little pieces that control the trim. Just be careful not to mix them. Make sure that the one that you're removing from the bottom goes back on the bottom, and the one that you remove from the side goes back to the side. By removing these two little boards, now we have more space to install the new gimbal. And as you can see, the gimbal has the same type of connectors of the previous gimbal, but there is a specific way to mount it. You cannot mount it exactly as the previous one, where the tension plates are on the center. This gimbal must be installed in the opposite way, and you'll notice that the length of these wires are made specifically to match that position. Install the gimbal with the tension plates on the outside. After placing the gimbal on its proper position, it's time to plug in all the connectors back and reinstall the little boards for the trimming. The following step will be to secure the gimbal in place by installing the 4 screws on the front side of your remote control. After installing your left side gimbal, you have to do exactly the same with the right side gimbal. And the only difference is that this time you don't have to remove the spring, because you want both axes on the stick to be spring to return to the center. That was pretty much it. I have put together the two parts of the radio again, and there's an extra step you have to do in order to get your gimbals to work properly, and is to do a stick calibration. And to do that, you'll have to turn on your radio and press the menu button for a couple of seconds, and then find the screen that will allow you to do the stick calibration. Now, probably your sticks are gonna look different than this. I already did the calibration previously. All you have to do is to center both sticks and then press the calibration button and move them all around to their maximum extent, and then the radio will just calibrate it automatically, and you should see the sticks moving in the same direction. If they don't, then you'll have to do some additional configuring on your menu and reversing the sticks, the stick travel or the stick movement. And that's pretty much it, guys. So I really hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and on Instagram.